Every podcaster that I've been talking to in the last few months, even few years, just wants to make money from their show. There's a way to do it in the right way, and there's a way to do it that might not be as much in alignment overall. So, in this episode, I've brought my incredible team to talk about how to monetize your podcast with the right strategies versus just getting paid. Let's get into this episode. Hello, friends. I'm so happy to have you guys here today. I love our roundtable conversations. So, thanks for joining me for another episode.
They're always
Happy to
fun.
be here.
Thanks.
I'm so excited. Normally, we do this live, but I will say this is coming out on actual Thanksgiving. There's a lot of family, a lot of travel, a lot of stuff going on. And so we wanted to make sure that we put out an episode. So we chose to do this not live in our Facebook community like we normally do. And I'm okay with it because, over here we talk a lot about being consistent versus just putting out content just because. So we wanted to make sure that this was something that was actually going to be valuable. So, yeah, anyways. Excited about that. Okay, in our conversation today, we are talking about monetizing your podcast. And the reason why is because we're actually just getting prepped and getting ready for our Black Friday offer. And if you're listening to this after that time period, this is still going to be super valuable for you. But we wanted to come together and we wanted to talk about some of the ethical pieces within this because the Black Friday offer has a podcast monetization kit in it. And what this podcast monetization kit is all the different ways in which and the strategy behind making money with your podcast. So, we wanted to talk about some of the ethical things because we've seen a lot over the last little bit, and we might call out a couple of brands and a couple of things and give you some examples. So, I feel like we should just dive in. I don't know who wants to go first, but I want to talk first about the importance of brand values in your overall monetization strategy.
Obviously, everyone wants to make money with their podcast. That is one of the top goals that almost everybody has. Few people do it just as a hobby. And we completely understand that here as a team. However, one thing that we prioritize a lot is when we're setting up sponsorship opportunities and looking at ways that are the podcasts we work with, they can grow their brands, is making sure it's in alignment with their values. We don't want to just have people throw money at us from any direction. We want to make sure it's actually in alignment with, first of all, what our podcast is actually about and who we serve and how we're serving them best. If it doesn't line up, it doesn't make sense, it can come off very, well, not in alignment with what we're trying to accomplish with our podcast. It can actually do the opposite and have the opposite effect.
A 1000%. And two things come up for me when you're saying this is one is the audience's expectations, because whether your audience realizes it or not, they do have like an expectation of the types of things that you would say and support and products that you would be paid for to promote. And if it kind of veers off from that, it can confuse people and they're like, wait, what? So, first one is audience expectations. And then the second one is the trust that you've built with your audience. I'm curious what you guys think about that.
I think that that's a really interesting point because I think audience expectations is definitely one thing that I know I've stopped listening to podcasts before because of how they align themselves with brands. If you're a podcast that is always talking about inclusiveness and you want to make sure that your audience feels seen, you want to recognize everyone in your audience, and you work hard at doing that for your podcast, and then you align yourself with sponsors that aren't going to be helpful to your audience, it kind of seems like a slap in the face to the listeners. Because you're like, okay, you're preaching inclusivity, like all brands should be doing this thing, but you're working with a brand that does not do that. How does that make
Yeah.
sense? For instance, it could be something as much as like size inclusivity with a clothing brand. If you're working with a clothing brand and you're in your podcast, you're like, all bodies are important, all people are important, everybody deserves to feel their best. And then you work with a brand that goes up to size like maybe XL, 2XL. Like, you're leaving out a large portion of your audience that probably is
Oh,
following
yeah.
you because they didn't get that message a lot and they feel valued and heard and seen by you.
Mhm.
So that's just one that pops into my head.
Sam, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with Emily. Everything she says is so true. It's really hard to, like you said, build the trust with someone because when you're a consistent podcast listener, you really do like they become a part of your routine, they become part of your daily life. It's so off-putting to really trust what they're saying and how they're coming off and who they seem like as a person. And then an ad pop up that is completely off kilter and doesn't really make sense
Yeah.
for who they say they are.
1000%. And when you have a product on there, because here's the thing at the end of the day, you want to make money from your show, right? So you're going to go and you're going to do a brand sponsorship or a brand deal or a paid deal, whatever that thing looks like. If the product is misaligned with your audience overall, it also, like, in addition to the trust between like you and your audience, the trust between you and the brand isn't there either. But I keep going back to this piece of the trust with your audience, because you are promoting something that they would never buy. And so, what is the point of having, some kind of advertisement or sponsorship or a partnership if the product that you are selling and sharing is not something that your audience is going to buy anyway? You know what I mean? Like, where is the ROI? Like, how does that become lucrative for you? Because if anything, it's going to damage your relationship. It's going to damage your relationship with the audience. And then the brand isn't going to want to partner with you either, because they're not getting any ROI, return on investment, on their investment in you, right? So if the product is misaligned and it doesn't actually make any sense, not only did you just break the relationship with your audience, you have no one buying the product. And so the sponsor isn't going to extend, renew, or be happy with the partnership that you're doing, right?
And I don't want to be like dramatic about it. It's a bit of a deception. Like you are actually attempting to deceive your audience, and don't think that they won't notice, because they absolutely
Uh-huh.
will. I think people think when it comes to working with brands, and this is across the internet, any kind of influencer, you see these ads pop up, people think that they won't notice when the values are not aligned, and it is absolutely
Mhm.
obvious. So don't think that your audience isn't going to notice.
There's polls that you can look up that how active podcast audiences really are for advertising. There is a lot of people who like will buy things that they had never heard of. I have bought multiple things that have been advertised on a podcast that I listen to because I trust
Yeah.
the group that I'm listening to. I trust the hosts. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can see why they're doing this. I also
Mhm.
know that they've aligned with this product. And I also have watched them in other instances with things cut ties with groups that they don't align with, and they
Mhm.
openly talk about it. I have listened to podcasts who have changed their music because of things that the musician themselves has done that they're like, "Hey, we don't wanna be aligned with that. We're not okay with
Mhm.
that. We don't support that. So we're not gonna, like,
Mhm.
continue to use that intro music. We're gonna find a whole new artist. We're gonna go through this awkward phase of literally one of the people just, like, wrote a new intro song each time and made up these ridiculous intro songs. They were hilarious. Everybody loved them. But they're like, "Hey, we're literally gonna go through this weird phase. Hang with us. We're working on it, but we want you to know that, like, we've changed." And
1000%.
so that's not even something as big as an advertising where you could be monetizing from your audience's purchases. So,
Mhm.
yeah, but I've bought multiple things from that podcast because I know, like, their relationships with those groups, and they've been advertising with some of them for years,
I love
and
that.
they work with them for stuff. So I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go buy some stuff from them. Now, do I wish
Mhm.
that some of their stuff was for not only new customers? Absolutely. But I also know that that is definitely something that is driven by a lot of the brands that you're working with and that kind of thing. So, there's only so much,
Exactly.
you have to take it and leave it with that.
Exactly, exactly. I have so many things that have come up while you were saying all of this, and here's the first thing that I have to say. Our team mascot, Celine, is having the time of her life in the background, and I'm here for it because we are a very dog-friendly agency here, and we live for our dogs, and we probably work. I mean, Sam has kids. None of us, Emily and I, don't have kids, but we live for supporting our dogs and our kids. So Celine is doing the most because she's reinforcing her mom's point right now, and she's really happy about it, and we
Mhm.
love that for her. So we're just gonna add that in. And then, but here's the thing, like, you'll hear from like all of the content that we create on here. We are an agency that is just, and even through the content that we put on social media, the stuff, the episodes that we put on here, like, we're never going to be the ones to tell you that everything needs to be 100% perfect and everything needs to be polished and everything needs to be like all this whatever. We are very much like, we want to have this conversation and things are going to happen, and like that's life and it is what it is, right? So anyways, so you can always expect a casual appearance from one of our dogs in our, it's probably never going to be Gus, because my dog
It's
Gus
gonna
is
be
just
my dogs. And it will be Celine and Buffy. I feel like I need to have, like, their little, like, images of them so you can see them and get to know them. This is just their personality.
I love them.
Their personality is nap until Mom is recording.
So this is so true, and this is why even okay, so you're listening to this that it's November now. If you're listening to this through December, just wait until you see what we have coming for you for December on our social media because like I literally have been so excited about it all week. Okay. Anyways, there's two other things though, Emily, that come from what you were saying, and I actually was writing down notes, and I haven't actually taken notes during like a podcast conversation in a long time because I'm like so excited. I'm like, there's so many different things that we can talk about. So the first one is this concept of trust overall, right? Trust in general is easy to get. You meet someone, you trust them until someone proves to you that they shouldn't be trustworthy. And then in which case the trust is lost, it's broken, right? So you have trust that's easy to get. You have also this aspect of trust that is very, very, very easy to break, right? And I'm not going to say it's impossible to get back because I absolutely believe that you can learn how to trust again. But the loss that happens in losing trust in a brand, in someone, in a creator or whatever, you lose that growth, right? So partnering with someone that not only from an ethical consideration, not only from a trust consideration, but you also have this idea of growth, right? So if we're talking about the idea of growing your podcast, which we also have coming in this Black Friday is our podcast growth kit. So all the ways in which you can learn how to grow your podcast in an actual significant way to make money from your show, which is our podcast monetization kit. But the growth side of it, we all focus on growth of our shows. You have to stand firm in your beliefs. And so let's talk a little bit about making sure that your own beliefs come through in what you are creating, what regardless of what side, because everyone has different opinions, right? Everyone has their own idea of what's right and wrong. Everyone has their own type of show that they're going to create. They have their own beliefs. But maybe talking a little bit about like the sides of our own beliefs in that, if that makes any sense. Does that make any sense?
I think it all comes down to like the foundation of your life. So, one thing that's really common for podcasters, even if it's not, and we're so used to being in the business world too. So, we see a lot of the ways that people utilize business opportunities for advertising, but a lot of the times it might be lifestyle based. And regardless of the situation, you can find things in your life that you enjoy, that you interact with all the time. And this is where one of the most common places to start is what products or what companies am I consistently using and utilizing and interacting with that I enjoy the experience. I actually really believe in it. I really trust it. If you are starting in that, then whatever opportunities follow that you pursue would make the most sense. And it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to pivot. It's okay to make mistakes. I think that's the other big thing that Emily was, getting to is that it's okay to mess up, but when you do, to keep that trust, you have to kind of make sure that you're being honest and transparent with your audience at all times. But I think it really just comes down to your life, your values personally as a human being first, not as a content creator first. And then it'll be a lot easier to find things that and companies to
Mhm.
work with that actually align with what you believe.
Mhm. I love that.
Well, I was also going to say, like, monetization, there's so many different streams of it. There are apps, but there's also like creating merch and stuff like that. And the same goes for that. Like, if you create something and you hear feedback from your group, one, that there's an issue like with the merch itself, like a quality issue, you should listen to that. Like, don't continue to pump out merch with a group that's like sending people stuff that's falling apart, that's not made well.
Mhm.
If you can, think about the ethics of how it's made. Like, depending on what your values are, like, that's a value for me. So, using myself as an example, I'm not going to speak for everybody else, but using myself as an example, you would want to see like how the ethics behind that company of where your things are being made. If you are promoting, pro like livable wage, things like that, you want to make sure you're not working with a group that literally employs like children and like doesn't pay them. You know? Like, just like
Mhm.
those things, but you don't think about it necessarily all the time. Like, think about the whole through line.
1000%. And as you're saying this, I'm thinking, okay, so people ask me all the time, have you ever monetized Happiness Happens specifically? So, my Happiness Happens podcast, have you ever made money off of it? And I have accepted out of all of the brand deal opportunities that I've received for that show, I've accepted two. The most recent one that I didn't accept was a company. I think the company itself was totally fine, like ethics wise and all of that. There wasn't anything wrong with the company, but it was the product for me. So it was like an energy drink type of company, and I tested the product, and I'll forever be the person to tell you that like the only caffeine that I ever drink is green tea. That's the only one that my body can handle. So when I was testing this product and it was making me feel like I had like, you know, I get like overstimulated,
Heart
I guess, with the
heart
caffeine. Like,
palpitations,
oh
like
my God.
yeah,
Like,
like,
oh my
that's a
God.
common thing for
Like
people. They feel like, "Oh, their heart's rushing."
oh my God. Like, I could not. And it was more of like a natural based product, which is why I was open to it. And I was like, yep, send me the product. Sounds good. And so tested the product and I was like, no, like I'm sure someone in my audience would love this and I'm sure it would be so beneficial for them. But for me as the creator of this show, this is not something that I would want to take for my own self. And it doesn't make me feel good. So if it doesn't make me feel good, how can I tell you it's going to make you feel good? I don't know that. You know what I mean? Because my experience with the product is this. There was another product that had approached for Happiness Happens as well. And it was like a hair loss product, and I was thinking to myself, like, that's not really something that I personally struggle with, and they wanted me to test the product, and I'm like, I don't know that I feel that aligned to that. You know what I mean? I'm like, if I look at my hair, like, I don't think that I'm the one who should be repping the hair loss product because like, I don't think there's much going on. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, okay.
Simona with
Um,
her mermaid hair, like,
I
no,
long
know,
literally.
right?
flowing locks.
But then it's like you're associating or people would associate that, oh, Simona got her hair like this because of this product, which is just not the case. And these were both within the last year. And could I have had really amazing partnerships? Yeah. Could I have made some good cash off of it? Absolutely. But I would rather not do that because that just doesn't feel good at the end of the day. Because God forbid something happens to someone who tries a product that I've recommended and I recommended it based off of not even having a good experience with it. That's
Mhm.
crazy. Like, why would you do that just for some money? Like, I know everyone's in a different situation and like there's always something to consider there too. But like, really think about the stuff like you're talking about, Emily. Like, the products that you recommend for people are things that literally people will buy and implement and put into their life. And so it's like, what do you want to stand behind? Right. So, yeah. Thoughts on that. And then also if we can give people some tips of like how to vet these different things and so on, so on. Yeah.
Well, I would say one of the things that you just said is, like, testing the product. If your name is not a recognizable name and you're building this, they may not want to send you a whole bunch of free product. Like, you
Mhm.
may have to make an investment to test things.
Mhm.
And you should think of it as that. This is an investment to see if this is a good partnership for your audience, for you, that kind of thing. Like, don't look at it as like, "Ugh, I have to pay money for things." Like, yeah, you do. Like, it would be wonderful if people could just send out free product. But depending on who
100%.
you're aligning with, if you're trying to work with a smaller brand, they may not have the marketing budget to send people for a ton of free stuff. Think about it like that. Like, you are also a small business potentially.
Mhm.
Why would you expect this other small business to give you like all this free stuff, you know? And so like just
Exactly.
think about it as like a true partnership, like test it, that kind of thing. So I think that that's one big part of it. Like I feel like I can tell when I'm listening to like ads sometimes if they actually have even seen the product or like used it.
Yep.
There's a different like tone quality to an ad read, I feel like sometimes
Mhm.
because of that. And then there's also some people who like do their own ad reads, which are just like wild. And I think they're hilarious. And I'm like, I don't know how these companies like it's a testament to how well their audience trusts them because their people must still be buying these. Because some of the stuff that comes out of their mouth, like otherwise, these companies would have dropped them so fast if they were not getting
Yeah.
stuff from them. So like think about that too. Like there has to be something there. That
1000%.
podcast in particular is my brother, and me, if anybody listens to the
I
Bim
was gonna
Bam.
ask if you can, like, drop
Yeah.
it.
The Bim Bam, I mean, they have their okay, their range of things that they've advertised over the, like, 15 years they've been podcasting are
Wow.
wild.
I love that. I love that. You're so I love it, Emily. You're so funny. Emily's just like she's like, "I can't with these dogs right now." But I'm here for it. Honestly, it's okay. We need a good cheerleader, and Celine is our girl. Sam, do you have any additional thoughts about that?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to say that there's a difference between, well, it's kind of an extension of trust is your reputation as a brand. And when you're working with other brands, their reputation becomes your reputation. So if something happens or something comes up or you haven't vetted them properly, you haven't done your research, that's going to come up at some point down the line. Just keep that in mind when you're,
Mhm.
choosing people to work with. And like I honestly, my biggest piece of advice is what I said before, which is start with what you actually trust and know and interact with consistently within your business, within your personal
Mhm.
life. that relates to your audience. Relating is really important. This is from a marketing perspective. Please make sure it actually makes sense for who you're serving, like we've talked about, and do your research. Even if it is a company
Mhm.
that you're used to working with, or it's a product you've had for like a long time, but you've never actually looked into them, still do your research before you commit to that. That's really, really important.
Absolutely. I totally agree with this. And as you're sharing this, I'm thinking I have a friend and him and I disagree on one product in specific from like a user, like usability point of view, if you will. But I and us within the agency, we use Descript all the time. We use Descript for all of our editing, content, social media, like all the things, right? And that's a product that I will happily put my name behind all the time because we use it day in, day out, every single day for every single project, every single client, even to record our course material, like the 2 courses that we're launching for Black Friday, the podcast growth kit and the podcast monetization kit. I literally recorded all of them in Descript and edited everything in Descript, pulled the transcript from there. Like, it's just like so helpful. But he will till, the hill that he will die on is that this product is not for me. Like it doesn't work. It never works for me and so on, so on. I think it's important to highlight too that even if you firmly believe in something, there is still someone who may not agree with your recommendation or whatever, like your promotion of something or whatever. But there's a difference between like disagreeing from just like your own, like a user point of view versus like, is this actually like not an ethical company or like not a good product to put your name behind? Like, there's a little bit of a difference there. And so I'll give you also one more tip on the vetting side, especially when you're going back and forth with creating ads and like creating an ad read, for example, making sure that you are asking the company for the talking points that they want to get across. And then together, you guys come up with the messaging and you create the ad from the way that you would say it and how you would share it, and then get that approved from the company as well. So that way, you're also always making sure that everything is working in tandem together because anytime you put your name behind a brand, you're not separate from it, like you were saying. Like you are not separate from the brand. You and the brand become synonymous with each other. And so it's kind of like this sponsor, this partnership, this brand deal becomes an extension of your brand and not something separate from it. So you need to be careful and you need to just make sure that whatever it is that you're putting out there, like the content that you're sharing, you're really wrapping it into all of the other stuff. And so, like we were talking about, and I want to highlight this for you guys because I didn't do this intentionally, but I also kind of did. Like you were saying, when you're talking about a product that you actually believe in, it's easy to do that. And Emily, you were saying, you can tell when someone doesn't actually believe in something. So, just in this podcast episode alone, I've talked about our Black Friday offer, the podcast growth kit, and the monetization kit so easy, so effortlessly, because I know it's a product that will actually help people. But then also further than that, Descript being a brand that I truly believe in also is something that's easy for me to just talk about and weave into an episode. So like that could technically be ads for both of those different things. And the way that we talked about it is so synonymous and so like easy because that I don't know how else to explain it. Like it just becomes easy because it's something that you truly believe in. So any final
Right.
thoughts?
And then when you were talking about the brand deals that didn't align with you, it was harder for you to sometimes find the word to describe like why it wasn't
Yeah.
aligned. And you're like, I just like you knew how it made you feel, but you're like, how do I get this across? Like, how do I make this like, you know what I'm
Mm.
saying? And
Yes.
you wait,
Intuition though is so important. Like
yeah.
that's why, yeah.
And
Go ahead.
you also said, like people have varying like degrees of they're going to agree with you. And I agree with that too, because some of the podcasts I've listened to, so they advertise with a group called Quince. It's a clothing group. I don't know if you have ever heard a podcast that advertises with them. So their whole thing is cutting out the middleman and trying to do more sustainable clothing. And so
Mm.
they cut out the middleman of them selling to somebody else to then come to you or them getting materials from other people. So it's high quality products that will probably last you longer, but they are going to be at a slightly different price range. Like there's not going to be Shein, it's not going to be Temu prices because they're trying to like go through the whole process how they feel is ethical and that kind of thing. That aligns with the podcast that I listen to. Now, I'm not going to be able to buy from them necessarily because they don't really have a very large size range. I'm not going to stop listening to that podcast because they are working with these people because I see
Mm.
how the ethics still align, even if it doesn't touch every single point of like, I can buy this particular thing. I'm not going to always buy every single product, but I like to be able to see why the podcaster would choose this one. Like, I like for that to
Mhm.
make sense to me. Whereas
1,000, yeah.
if you are a podcast and you have been like very pro certain things, unions, stuff like that, whatever, and then you end up selling your show to a conglomeration that is constantly trying to squash unions and does some really things that are not great with that, like have like directly does things and in the news does things against those values that you say are so important to you, and then you sell your show to them and become on their network,
Mm,
I stop listening because I'm like, it
1,000%.
was more important to you to get on this network and probably get a pay bump and all this stuff and get that name recognition than it was to stay true to these other groups that you said were so important to you. Like
Mhm.
to me, that's a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Like,
Sam, any
hu-
thoughts?
so yeah.
Well,
Emily, do you
I
wanna
think
finish that thought really quick? Sorry, sorry, sorry.
oh
No, the
yeah.
thought was done. I talk too much, so I'm good.
No, you don't.
No, I mean, honestly, it's so cool seeing like how passionate you are, Emily, about like making sure it aligns for you. And I think this is important to note, like, kind of going back to people can see through things that you might not think that they can see through. Just making sure that it aligns with your audience and making sure that it makes sense for them. There's a huge, huge difference between something not being for one specific person in your audience and not aligning with them personally on like a really basic level versus something that is massively unethical. So like I said, do your research, make sure that you are,
Mhm.
making sure that it actually aligns with who you are as a person. Start there. That's the biggest tip, is starting with who you are as a human being when you're searching for these opportunities and connecting with these businesses to work with them. And the other piece is what you said about the ad reads. I wholeheartedly agree with making sure that there's some kind of creativity and storytelling involved with that. I have listened to some very hard to listen to ad reads because I just want to get to the rest of the episode. And I sit there and
I
I'm like,
know.
"Ooh, I just want to get through this." It should
You
not
should
be a
message them and send them to us. No, I'm just kidding.
it should not be a painful experience listening to your ad read. Okay. It should not be
Mhm.
difficult to sit through. If you wouldn't sit and listen through it, then your audience won't either. So be creative. And if the brands that you want to work with won't let you be creative, won't let it make sense for your audience, don't work with them. It's really that
Yeah.
simple.
1,000%, because you need to make sure that whatever you're putting out there is in, again, like going back to the top of this episode, is in full alignment with everything else that you're doing. I want you to think about it as like any other relationship in your life. Like if you're in any other relationship, can you be yourself? Can you have fun? Does your personality shine? You know what I mean? Because if you don't, then there's something to like look at there for sure. And also, I would say pulse check your audience too. If you have a community, especially if you have like a closed community, a private paywalled community, check with them, ask them to reach out to you, to reply when they read your emails. And also, you don't need to be like, I remember we worked with this client once and it was like, how many people can I partner with? You know what I mean? It's like, but do you even really know all those companies? So, like, you don't need to have a million different affiliate links and a whole bunch of sponsors to like have a lucrative income from advertising on your show. So, any final thoughts before we wrap up for today?
That one about the you don't need a lot of sponsors or you don't need a lot of like partnerships. That is so important. And I think that people don't understand the way that this works. If you even have one brand partnership that you're affiliated with, that
Yep.
you build your brand around and build seamlessly into your podcast and into your branding and into your content creation, you will make so much more money over time than attempting to partner with a bunch of people that makes it look like it doesn't connect. So if it's not seamless and it doesn't make sense, no one's going to purchase the actual thing that you're trying to sell and make a commission off of. That's actually another great tip. Start with one brand or partnership opportunity and build your brand around that. Weave it into your content, something you're really passionate about, something that makes sense for your audience, and start there and build that out before like continuing to try to add more and more things.
I love that. Emily, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I would say, like, think about how much time you're spending trying to get your community get together, trying to promote your community, trying to build this community, trying to build your audience, and just like build your podcast reputation. Why wouldn't you put the same care into who you partner with? Why wouldn't you want
Mhm.
them to put the same care into their name, into their brand as you are putting into yours? So really think about that. Like this is something that you are proud of. You want to make sure you're proud of it in all aspects. So
I love that. I love that. Amazing advice. Thank you so much for joining me and all of us today. I absolutely love when you guys come on and doing these roundtables because it's just so fun to just chat about literally this industry that we work in and day out. I'm going to plug one more time Podcast Growth Kit, Podcast Monetization Kit. The links for that are in the episode notes below. And also, this is my I'm like sweating saying this because this is like the dumbest thing. I like to make stupid jokes. But join us next week for our episode all about how to slay, SLEIGH, your podcast for the holidays. Bye.